Thank you very much, Chair. I think, look, like a lot of areas of youth work and a lot of areas in general, the Garda Youth Diversion projects have been under a lot of strain in the last few months, last 18 months or so in relation to COVID. And it has allowed many of these groups, many of these projects to reach out in new ways and find new ways of working. And certainly a lot of outreach was done that was very effective for reaching out to young people who mightn't have previously been involved in centre-based work, the centre-based work of the youth projects. Equally, I'm on the board of a youth project, Garda Youth Diversion project in Crumlin called Clay. Clay did a piece of assertive outreach to hard-to-reach young people who were causing lots of trouble in the neighbourhood, but were also not engaging with any of the centre-based services. And this very focused piece of outreach allowed Clay to be able to reach out and build relationships and start the work, accepting where these young people were at and starting the work and start pulling them back into the centre, or even trying to divert them from where they were while working on the street. As things return to normal, a lot of the services are faced with a challenge between choosing between outreach, which is proven and effective and reaches very difficult to reach young people, and centre-based work, which again is also proven and is also has good outcomes for young people. So, to force people to choose between these two, to force services to choose between outreach and centre-based work, I think is deeply unfair and ultimately unfair on the young people themselves. We need to look at funding dedicated outreach workers and dedicated outreach services to reach those young people who are so far refusing to or unwilling to engage in the centre-based programmes. It allows a street-level response to the crime and antisocial behaviour that the projects, despite the good work they're doing in centres, aren't able to bring. It's not either either one or the other. We need both. And to do the outreach properly, we need funding to go with that. And there's no mention of that kind of specialist outreach within the strategy, and I really feel that this is something that we need to start resourcing and start developing policies around. And just in speaking of groups and hard-to-reach groups and new groups, like, I would share the concerns raised by other deputies in here and by the Irish Penal Reform Trust in relation to the inclusion of 8 to 11-year-olds. Bearing in mind that the age of criminal responsibility begins at 12, scooping up 8 to 11-year-olds and including them in a criminal justice response, I'm concerned will stigmatise a whole bunch of young people who should be receiving generalised support services, not justice-themed support services, not support services around offending. Now, look, I know that there is offending behaviour in people that young. There are gangs looking to groom children that young, partly because of the lack of criminal responsibility on groups that young. So we do need a response to them, but a criminalising one, or one that scoops them into justice programmes, will create problems of stigmatism. And there are huge problems of stigmatisation. There are a lot of young people who feel in communities, disadvantaged, marginalised communities, who feel they are picked on simply because of being a member of that community, who feel that the guards are out to get them because they are poor. And this creates an us and them attitude. It creates an us and them, a resistance to the kind of youth justice work that is actually successful. And it can be fatal to a lot of this youth justice work that we're all sitting here talking about and that we're all praising. So we need to be very conscious of and very careful around that stigmatisation, and also conscious of and aware of that a lot of the problems that we are talking about in terms of youth offending grow out of a background of inequality and marginalisation and poverty. So while a youth justice strategy is very important, that strategy must have a fundamental grounding in those in that worldview. And I know the Minister has spoken about the holistic community-focused the need to be holistic and community focused, but we need to be naming marginalisation and poverty and social exclusion and actively addressing them. And look, others have talked about the need to include TUSLA, the need to include the HSE, and this is all part of that. You know, so while I commend the strategy, that's one thing that occurs to me. And one of the other things then related to this, or related to the comments directly before me from Deputy Kenny, is about direct consultation with young people. We need to be looking at finding ways to directly communicate and consult with young people and have them feeding into these projects. Now look, I know a lot of the youth justice work that is done comes from that youth work perspective of consultation, of empowerment, of engagement, and a lot of that work is being done. But I look at the all-party parliamentary group on knife crime and violence reduction in the United Kingdom, and the work that was done in encouraging and supporting direct consultation with young people and with children from many of these marginalised communities who are often over-policed and who are very much the subject of all these kind of who will be on the receiving end of this strategy. You know, so I think finding ways to do that direct consultation will also help break down the stigmatisation and break down the us and them attitude between young people and Gardaí. And I thank the Minister for his support.
Thank you, Deputy Costello.